Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. With the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan winding down, America is gearing up to take care of its military personnel who are coming back. It goes without saying that Hampton Roads is significantly impacted, but the question is, are we ready to take care of our veterans? Do we have the resources and capabilities to handle those who have lived through war? What does coming back really mean for our sailors, soldiers, airmen, Marine, National Guard, and Coast Guard? WHRO is doing its part to help, and we'll tell you all about it next on Another View, right after this news from NPR.
Discussing today's topics from an African American perspective, this is Another View.
And good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. With this soggy week we've had, it's really nice that the sun is shining today, and it's supposed to be a great weekend. And if you're looking for something special to do where you can hang out outside, think about the Historic Garden Week in Gloucester. Their tour is tomorrow, Saturday, May 3rd, from 10 until 5, and there are 3 houses that are open in Gloucester that will be Whitehall, Shadow Hill, and Holly Knoll. And Holly Knoll is the retirement home of the pioneering African-American educator, Robert Risa Moten. And he was he was always known to say, come to Capahossock, which is the name of his house. And he invited many Black educators and civil rights activists to the home, and plans were hatched for the United Negro College Fund from there, and also part of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech purportedly was written at that home. And so it is listed by USA Today as one of the top 50 places to visit in the history of the civil rights movement. And currently, Kay Cole James, who you know is a distinguished veteran of state and federal government service, has the Gloucester Institute there, which is a place for training young, highly accomplished minority college students in the skills needed for leadership through conferences, seminars, and lectures. So you can go to anotherviewradio.org to find out about ticket information. That is tomorrow from 10 until 5. Hampton Roads is home to 108,000 active duty military personnel, and 178,000 veterans live here. And that number is expected to rise as the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq come to an end. Our veterans need services to help them regain their footing as a civilian, and WHRO-WHRV is doing its part to help. Today's Another View is part of a multi-year WHRO Veterans Initiative to engage the community to help support veterans as they transition to civilian life in Hampton Roads. To find out more about this initiative, please visit whro.org/veterans. Now, the initiative officially kicks off with the PBS 3-part series called Coming Back with Wes Moore, which airs on Tuesdays this month, beginning May 13th on WHRO-TV 15 from 8 until 9 p.m. Wes Moore takes viewers with him into the personal lives of different soldiers as they attempt to reintegrate into society, establish new identities, and for many, find a new mission. Let's take a listen to a clip from Coming Back with Wes Moore.
Earl Johnson's commitment and energy have made him a leader of the group of veterans who have made restoring Oliver their mission.
The veterans group, we work on parks and we work on cleanups because as veterans, we just cannot ignore a problem.
But all of Earl's relationship building on the streets has come at a cost.
Shut up, TJ.
When your mission takes over your life, other things get pushed to the back burner.
He's very invested in what he does, and not enough investment into our relationship. So I feel somewhat resentful, and I just rather not hear about it.
And that's a clip from Coming Back with Wes Moore. And listeners, you are invited to attend a free screening of Coming Back with Wes Moore this coming Tuesday, May 6th, from 6:30 to 8:30, right here at WHRO, 5200 Hampton Boulevard here in Norfolk. It is my honor to serve as a host to a community conversation following the screening when we'll hear stories of coming back from our local veterans. The event is free, but seating is limited. Please register to attend at whro.org/veterans or call Kelly Jackson at 757-889-9415. It is now my pleasure to welcome to another view Jaren Hawkins, an Army veteran and ODU student. Hi, Jaren. How are you?
Hello.
Good. So thank you so much for joining us today. Yennetta Taylor, an Air Force veteran and student at ODU also. How are you, Yennetta?
I'm great. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much for coming. And Dr. Bruce Brunson, he is Executive Director with the Center for Military and Veterans Education at Tidewater Community College. How are you doing today,
Doing
Bruce?
great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being with us. And joining us by phone is Christopher Justice, a Navy veteran and addiction therapist with the Veterans Administration in Hampton. Hi, Christopher. How are you?
I'm fine. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good. So you all heard the clip that we played from Coming Back with Wes Moore, and he talked about the fact that this young man really focused his life on what he did coming back to the detriment of his relationships. Jaren, is that one of the issues that veterans face in terms of trying to reestablish and keep relationships?
I feel like it kind of is. It's a big part of our lives, so we compare it to things that happen here, so yeah, I think
So what is it like from an American perspective, and each of you are veterans, so when you serve overseas and you come back to America, what is it that Americans need to know about what it's like to be over there, Yennetta? What are we missing? Because we don't have war right here on our shores necessarily. So what do we need to know?
I think just having a better understanding of what their family members, or even if they don't have a family member, understanding the occupation of being in the military. And I think people, they see a lot of the all of the benefits. We get the GI Bill and we get all of these different programs, but to understand that you actually left your home and you went to serve for the people in America, because you do not want the war on these shores. But I think if they had a better understanding of what military occupation was, rather than see kind of what's on the news, they see the war and then they see, okay, they get all these benefits. Somewhat, I think some people feel ostracized by the fact that they don't receive some of the benefits, especially in this area. I think good 75-80% of the retail here gives you a military discount. So, or you benefit in some way being prior military. But I think some of that appreciation, just real quick, when I was growing up, my mother had a different understanding with Vietnam and all that. And when she brought us up, every time the military band would be at the Norfolk Scope or Chrysler Hall, they would give free concerts. And she would take us to those things so we could kind of see. But I don't think that was a part of everybody's upbringing. So they really, at the time I was like, wow, we're young. But she explained to us, because my uncle had served and different things, it was kind of like the military was giving back with air shows and different things like that. But a lot of that has, subsided with finances and the government. So,
Bruce, what from your perspective? Because you served during the Vietnam era. Correct?
Right.
Okay.
I'm a betweener between Vietnam and the Gulf War. I think one of the things that is the hardest adjustment to come back to a family is that the family doesn't realize how much the person is really a different person. Whether you go into combat or whether you go sit on a ship or you're doing not in combat, once you go through boot camp and once you go into the forces, whichever ones they are, you are never going to be the same person. So, it's like a parent. You're always 16 years old. So they turn out now, they're mature, they have different attitudes, they have different friends. And then, our measure of effectiveness when we go and join the military is is, did we win the war? Mm-hmm. That's different than coming back where your measure of effectiveness is a grade or it is, return on investment or something else. So we're trained daily to do something that you can't do when you come back. But I think the really absolutely key part is that you just can't put somebody into, and I say this, for example, you go on a ship, you don't pick who you're going to live with. You are going to have a relationship for 6 months with somebody or in someplace else. Mm-hmm. And that is at the detriment a lot of times of your family relationship. So when you come back, I think that's the hardest part, is for people in a nation to realize you are not the same person.
What about you, Chris?
Well, I absolutely agree with every member's sentiments. In addition, I think it's important that everyone realizes there will be an adjustment period. And some of the decisions that the veteran is making is based on their ability to try to acclimate back into the environment at home. And, in some instances, in my case, coming back home, I came home to a brand new home, and we moved prior to me going on deployment. And we were all living in overseas before we came back to Virginia. And so when I got back, it was still a brand new home for me, as opposed to my family, who had been living there for 9.5 months, and they were, adjusted to one another. And so now I had to go through my adjustment period. And so some of the challenges associated with me adjusting to the way they established their lifestyle was a bit unsettling for each of us. And so if everyone can just recognize that there will be an adjustment period and then have patience with the veteran as they go through that adjustment to acclimate back home, that would be really beneficial.
There's a clip from the show, from Coming Back with Wes Moore. This is a woman by the name of Latrice, and Wes Moore asked her what message she'd like to get out to the general public. Let's take a listen.
The vast majority of people that are going to watch this have never put on the uniform of the United States of America. What is something that you hope that they understand about us?
It's a certain expectation that civilians have for men and women in uniform. Being Army strong always, but just know that there's times when everyone needs help.
Being Army strong. Jaren, tell us your story. Why did you become Army strong?
Well, it was after 9/11. Well, before 9/11, I, was playing with going into the military. I was in Navy Junior ROTC in high school, so I thought about going into the Navy. I really wanted to go into the Air Force. My dream was to be an Air Force pilot. Mm-hmm. But I guess after 9/11 and talking to the Army recruiters, 9/11 is when I knew that I was going into the military, and I was going to Iraq. And I told everybody, my best friends, I told them all, I was like, hey, I'm going to Iraq, I'm going to kill insurgents. I'm going to, for what they did, to the American people. That's why.
Did you know you had that kind of patriotism prior to what happened at 9/11? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I grew up in this area, I grew up in York County, and it's the Yorktown battlefields, so we spent time in Jamestown and the battlefields, on field trips and all that stuff. So, American patriotism has always been,
part of your life.
Yeah.
Okay, so you went. And how long were you there? And tell us a little bit about what happened.
15 months in LSA Anaconda, which is about 30 miles north of Baghdad. I did route clearance, so basically I drove up and down the same roads going about 15 miles an hour, looking for roadside bombs, IEDs, all that kind of stuff. I got hit 5 times. Luckily, I'm still alive. Luckily, all of us are still alive. It was, 30 of us who, were in our platoon, and we took shifts, A team, B team. We would go out, A team would go out in the mornings, B team would go out in the nights, driving up the same roads, the main supply routes, looking for roadside bombs, and then we'd get one day off, and then we switch, and B team would go, So that's what Iraq was like for me.
Wow. And you stayed there for 15 months.
15 months.
Okay, and when you came back, what was think back to when you came back, what was one of the most rewarding things that happened first? And then we'll talk about what was one of the most difficult.
Rewarding. Everybody keeps telling me that I did something, Sometimes, when I came back, it was, my friends are graduating college, I came back, I guess, a year after they graduated, you know, and they starting their careers, and I just felt like I was lost. But they were like, oh, you did something. You went to Iraq. And I was like, maybe. You know, so I guess that was rewarding. I didn't really recognize it as rewarding, but
at that time.
Yeah, but everybody was praising me for the, you know, yeah, you did something. I'm like, I guess.
And what was one of the most difficult?
Coming back. Coming back altogether was difficult.
Were you scared? I mean, in the sense of being nervous about coming back?
Honestly, coming back was kind of like going to Iraq. You know, it was all foreign to me. I got into that rhythm of, you know, all I had to do was worry about one thing, and that was the mission. That was looking for IEDs. That was all I had to do for 15 months. You know, I came home, you know, back to my barracks, and I played video games or I ate, but I really didn't have I didn't have bills to take care of. I didn't have a car payment or school to go to. It was just that one, you know, and then come back and you have to take care of everything. And it was so foreign to me, you know.
I want to follow up on that in just a minute. But we do have one question. You said you were hit several times from bullets or shrapnel?
No,
or what happened?
My truck got hit by IEDs, 5 IEDs. Well, it was 4 IEDs and a rocket. Let's see. I got hit in December, January. I think it was March and like June and August.
Wow.
Yeah.
I bet those memories are still very fresh.
Yeah.
Aren't they?
Yeah,
aren't
they are.
Yennetta, was your experience like that? Tell us about your service and when you went in and what was going on.
Okay.
What made you serve first?
Oh, okay. Well, what made me serve was I was actually a student at Norfolk State, and I kind of was having a little bit too much fun in Norfolk State at the time, and you know there was you know, you need to do something type of thing in my household, and my mother was like, you need to decide what you want to do, you know. So I went and talked to the recruiter. You know, I looked at, and I'm a person all big about research, and I just asked 1,000 questions, and I was like, here I am at the age of 22, I don't have any children, and I was like, and I was seeing a lot of great things just on the commercials about the Air Force, and I was like, okay. And when I went to talk to her, she gave me her speech. She advertised real well, and I said, okay. And then I went and I still did some more research, and I came back and I enlisted, and mainly because at that time, education, you could get there was benefits for education for me, and with the GI Bill at the time, and I was like, this will work for me.
What year was this when you went in?
1993.
93, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I went in and I just was was going to do just 4 years and that's it. You know, that was kind of the plan. 4 years, go back to college because I wanted to teach freshman history. And 4 years turned into 8, turned into 12, 15, and then there was 20. Mm-hmm. So, but I still felt once I went through basic training and went to my first base, and when I would talk on the phone with my family, they had such appreciation for me. It was something my mother always wanted to do. She wanted to go to the Peace Corps, but she started having children very young. Her and my father had got married young, and she wanted to serve, but she just didn't have the heart to leave her children. Mm-hmm. And so she will always encourage me to continue to go. She was like, you're doing something great, especially as a woman and as a black woman. And I was like, okay, all right. But then when I got into the Air Force, and one thing about the military that I really loved, there was no racial divide, They didn't care what you were, who you were, who were your parents. I had people that were in basic, their parents were colonels, and this and that and the third, chiefs, whatever, prior service.
Did not matter.
And that's what I always liked. It was just an even keel, and we were all on the same playing field, and we did things together. Mm-hmm. And to have that sense of unity, that really, and I've always been that way. If you're asking anybody, I've always been that team player.
What did you do in the service? What was your job?
My job was, I started off, I had 8 years supply logistics, and then the last 12 it's called aviation resource management, basically command and control. So I took care of the air crew. Anybody who stepped in the jet, that's what we call it. If you step in the jet, whether it be a C-130, a fighter, heavies, whatever, we had to ensure that they had the proper training. And we would log their time, and we would make sure everything was sufficient for the Air Force. So all the numbers would be straight.
Now, did you serve in Iraq or Afghanistan?
Afghanistan.
You were in Afghanistan.
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
And when you came back from Afghanistan, the same question I asked Jaren, what was one of the most rewarding things and what was one of the most difficult?
The most rewarding was the reception. Even when we came back and we came through BWI, Baltimore Washington Airport, everybody just was clapping, and it was an amazing experience. And I was just like, oh my God, compared to what I used to read about with Vietnam, people spitting on them and stuff. We were it was such a huge reception. And to see what had happened over there, even though I was command and control, I was with a special forces unit, as I was it used to be a Herbert Field out of AFSOC is what it's called, Air Force Special Operations Command, and it was, we were the serious fighters. So, we were on the ground, and what our mission was there was pretty serious and detrimental to the Afghan war. So everybody fight was the same, but special ops is a little different.
I tell you, there is a little bit of competition between the forces here. Yes. I love it.
But with special forces, it's all of them combined, and that's that joint unity. But yeah, it was something. So coming back, it was a great reception. And then what my family, my children know at the time, my son kind of shied away from me. As soon as I talked to him on the phone, he was just like, "What are you doing over there? You're supposed to be here with me, And I think he was like 3 or 4, and he was like, well, what about dinner? Stuff like that. And my girls were they were a joy. But everybody, just trying to get them to understand. And my husband at the time, was like, well, what are you doing? And I was like, you can't really talk about it. You can't really. You can say
that's one of the other things that probably puts a strain between the family and the service person, because they can't always talk about what you're doing. Right.
Isn't that right? Just know I'm okay, And I did experience. We had one explosion over there. Unfortunately, I experienced a lot of boot ceremonies, is what they're called. Unfortunately, because we would lose a lot of troops that way, because they had a lot of one-on-one fire. But
boot ceremonies meaning deaths.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understand.
Yes, ma'am. But the first time I heard the explosion, that does something to you. It really does. You just you can't kind of recover from it, because once you hear it, you have nowhere to go to, because you don't know how close it is. But once it's close enough to hit the ground, and your cabin just your doors on the shack just open up, and you just took cover, and you waited for any more fire to occur.
Wow. Chris, I want to ask you the same question. Can you tell us your story?
Okay, well, I joined in 1986, and really I needed to do something different with my life. I had been out of high school for a year working in a factory and wasn't going anywhere fast, so certainly joining the military was an option that I took advantage of. And, I joined to, like I said, do something different with my life, get my education, and, see the world. And let me fast forward to 9/11. Everyone asks, what were you doing during 9/11? I just happened to be working at a military hospital, but I was a mental health technician. And so after that event, myself and a team of other mental health workers went to the Pentagon, and we saw about 1,700 personnel, both military and civilian, who were significantly impacted by the event of the airplane crashing into the Pentagon. I have to tell you, it was a very eye-opening experience to see everyone coming together to care for those who had just felt terribly violated by that event. And so that was really something to experience, to be able to try to care for. I'm talking very senior military leaders, very senior civilian leaders, all the way down to the most junior rank and file personnel. And everyone, of course, was just ready to get their rucksack or whatever they called it, to just go underway and take care of the enemy. And it was pretty incredible to have that particular experience. And my wife and I were both active duty, though. So although the country rallied around each other to support one another from this traumatic event, we personally was challenged by the fact that we had 3 young children, and she herself was working at the Pentagon as a mental health worker as well. And
wow.
We had the occasion of one of our babysitters quitting. We had an infant, and because of the time that we served to take care of the military and the civilians, our babysitter said, I have a family too. I can't continue to take care of your child. So we had that dilemma of, we're both active duty, we're both serving these long hours. We have, underage children in daycare, and one of our babysitters quit. It was pretty traumatizing.
And no family close by.
No family close by. We couldn't rely on our family, so it was a kind of traumatizing experience for us in terms of what do we do? Neither one of us can walk away from our commitment.
Sure. Absolutely.
But in terms of my deployment in 2008 and 2009, where I actually went over to Afghanistan, not boots on the ground, but on the ship, that was exhilarating. You said what was the most rewarding experience about that was we knew, all 5,000 of us on board that ship, that from the lowliest sailor all the way up to the captain, that every one of our contributions was geared toward meeting the needs of those servicemen and women who had boots on the ground, taking the fight to the enemy directly. And so our account every evening was how many warheads did we put on foreheads to protect our own. And, it's humorous, but it really was a serious effort to make sure that no matter what your job was, you did it to the best of your ability because you knew American lives were at stake. And so coming home, and like the young lady said, coming home and having that warm reception in the ceremony, and it's unbelievable when an aircraft carrier comes into port and the families, and it's just an incredible celebration. There's nothing like it. It's breathtaking.
And what was the tough thing for you?
Well, again, that adjustment, now that I'm home.
Now what do I do?
The cheering stops because now we got to get down to the business of living. And even though you were gone, we still lived. We had to move on and get on with our lives, and we have our routine. And yes, we celebrated your coming home, but now it's time to help to get the kids off to school. And when they come home, they have homework to do, and there's projects. And I know you was gone, but I need your help now.
And I'm curious, were you and your wife, did you both retire at the same time?
No, she actually retired in 2008, and it was a pretty interesting situation. She retired in 2008. We transferred back from overseas. We were in Japan together as a family. Transferred back from overseas, and then within a month I was gone for 9.5 months. So this was a new area for her.
Wow.
So it was a lot of transition for us in 2008, 2009. And then, of course, I retired in 2012, but
that's a lot. If you're just joining us, we're talking about the challenges and successes of our military members as they transition from war to civilian life with Army veteran Jaren Hawkins, Air Force veteran Yennetta Taylor, Navy veteran Christopher Justice, and Dr. Bruce Brunson with the Center for Military and Veterans Education at Tidewater Community College. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 is the number to call to join our conversation. If you are a veteran, thank you for your service. Thanks to all of you, my guests, for your service. And we would love to hear your story. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Also, if you have a question, if you are not a veteran and you've been curious about some of the issues that they face, give us a call and let's join the conversation. Bruce, I'm not leaving you out. You served, though, through Vietnam as well as these other wars, or at least are familiar with it in terms of dealing with veterans from there. What's the difference?
Well, I didn't actually go to Vietnam. I was saved, you guess.
That's right. You were in between.
Actually, I enlisted in 1969, and all my relatives, and some written up in history books, were Marines from World War I and World War II. And I didn't know you did not go. I was actually born at Quantico, Virginia. So
really?
There wasn't any doubt I was going in the military. So the day of high school, I enlisted. But I enlisted in the Navy, something about foxholes and sheets.
Now, if your whole family was Marine and you went in the Navy, what's up with that?
Well, let's just say they were extensive combat veterans, and PTSD was not diagnosed back then. So I grew up in an interesting environment, a good environment, by the way, not a complaint. And then I showed up at boot camp. My draft notice for the Army showed. I was a slow learner, failed third grade and some other something, And I was 19 getting out of high school, so all the veterans from Vietnam era will understand where I was going. My draft notice was 69. So I went in, and somebody took care of me. Next thing you know, I was at the Naval Academy. And so I came out of the Naval Academy, went into naval aviation, primarily helicopters, and flew in an area which I think is interesting. One of them during the Vietnam War, we already knew. Even as a midshipman, we weren't well respected going down the street. But it was a different era, and it was a wind down, or just like we're doing now. The drawdown's happening by the time I got in there. But we still, at that time, they called it low-intensity conflicts. And we always thought it's funny because they had Grenada, they had other things in the Panama, they had Libyan ops. There is nothing low-intensity when you have bullets coming at you. And so it's a different environment to do that. And so I'm not. It's nothing like we got now. So I know people like me appreciate what they're doing. We're the betweeners before and after us in the frontline combat. But some of the same things when you come home. I was always scared to come home because I had to transition back to something. You get up in the morning and we didn't even have communications, and you do your job, and you're trained to do your job. And I think that's sometimes bothers people that you train for your whole career. I trained for most of my career. The time I spent in actually worrying about bullets was very minor. Where now is they train for the career and they got to worry about bullets a whole lot.
Absolutely.
But I think there's a difference in the transition. But I don't care because, a small percentage of the active service members ever go in front of combat, except for the Army. But we all have to come back to our families and to the civilian world. And I talk about education. I can't think of anything much scarier than coming back and then having to go into an academic environment where when you came in, you probably didn't think you were prepared before you got there. That's why you went in the military. And then you're coming back and you walk in and you're competing. You look over there and an 18-year-old is sitting there. Wow. So I think it's all a scary part.
So talk to me about the Center for Military and Veterans Education. What is that, and what do you all do to help veterans?
Well, the Center for Military Education, and I firmly believe there's nothing like this in the United States now. At Tidewater Community College, we have 14,000 military-related students, which includes 6,000 plus veterans, 2,000 active duty, and about 7,000 spouses and dependents. So we're a small college, and so when they designed the center, they took a lot of the knowledge of what it takes to be service members to transition and be successful in education. And this includes primarily a one-stop shop, which we have, and we have one of the finest facilities, and we have something at every base and at every campus. So they combine the resources. So you have a one-stop that worries about all your student services, your VA benefits, your tuition assistance. And when you walk in, we have about 40 VA work studies that work at the different, and they are students at TCC, and they are veterans, and they're paid by the VA. And so they do what I call a triage, and you are mentored as you come in by peers. Again, another big check mark. So the check marks for a college to have student success are a one-stop center, because the military get really frustrated. That's a technical
frustrated.
term.
Frustrated.
I didn't say they taught me to talk, but they know this because I hear it from ODU, and they're starting a center too. They come in, they're talking to somebody from the military, because every one of us are retired military, a veteran, or a spouse.
So you already understand.
They all understand
what the unique circumstances are around that. Now, do you worry a lot? Because one of the things I hear is that the transition of the military skills into actual work skills for civilian jobs. So do you spend a lot of time working?
I probably get up every morning along with a lot of my staff, and that's one of the number one things we work on is making them employable. From my president on down, she says it's not necessarily a degree, it's being employable. Because the service members, when they come out, they're adults. The large percentage of them have families and kids, and unfortunately the GI Bill is not something you're going to live off of. And then all have been told that they need to go to college and need to get a degree. Well, we're significantly working on the fact that you need a laddered approach. When you come out, you take your rate or your MOS, your occupational subspecialty, and let us try to help you get into industry with something you can make a living wage so that you can afford to do your family and go to work. And then get a certificate, and then get an associate's, and then build that into a bachelor's degree. Statistics are coming out, significant ones now, that show that your success to get a bachelor's is a lot higher if you start with associates. But the job market, there's no shortage of jobs. It's just they have to take their skill sets and make them civilian. And, you know, unfortunately, everybody's told you're just going to jump right into the job. Well, you have the leadership skills, you have all those great skill sets, but there's one key part, is that if you didn't have math skills when you went in,
you don't have them necessarily
you don't
when you
have
come
them
out.
now. So when we do our testing for placement, the scores are almost exactly like high school students. So, again, the preparation for college needs to be done. So I can drag this out for about 2 hours.
No, don't do that. Don't do that, because the phones are ringing and we want to get to that. But I appreciate that. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. James joins us from Norfolk. Hi, James. You're on the air.
Hello?
Hi, you're on the air.
Yes. Well, let me just say, first and foremost, I thank you for broadcasting this information. My name is James Burwell. I'm a licensed clinical social worker with the Norfolk Vet Center here located on Church Street. What we do here, just to give you a little synopsis of what we do, we provide readjustment counseling services to combat veterans and their families. We are the people who welcome home combat veterans home with honor. A lot of people do not know about our services here. I would like to say we have about 300 vet centers nationwide, 300 plus actually, and we are part of the Department of Veteran Affairs. We fall right under the Veterans Health Administration, just as the VA hospital does.
So how does a veteran who served in combat, how do they find you? I mean, what happens or how is your information transmitted to them as they're coming out of the service?
Yes, that's a very good question. In our services here, a large part of what we do is outreach services. So in addition to providing clinical work, we do a lot of counseling here. We are responsible for going out and providing outreach to those veterans. And that's a good question because a lot of people do not know about us here at the Vet Center, and that's unfortunate. So we're working very hard to ensure that we get the word out. We liaise with a lot of organizations out in the community that service veterans.
Okay.
The Vet Center was actually established. Now, I know we have a combat veteran, a Vietnam veteran on the air. And he may not know this, and he may know this, but the Vet Center is actually here as a result of the Vietnam veterans. They are responsible for us being here. As we know, when veterans were returning back from Vietnam, no services were in place. They were struggling with psychological injuries. 1979, Congress mandated that the Department of Veteran Affairs provide readjustment counseling services. In April 1991, that was extended to other war eras as a result of the Persian Gulf War. October 1996, it was extended to World War II and Korean combat veterans.
So the more we learn about the injuries and the things that veterans or armed forces personnel face, the more we can help them on the other end. James, I'm going to ask you a favor, and that is if our screener would take your number and so that we have your information for the Vet Center because of our new initiative. Here at WHRO, we're trying to connect services with the people who need them. So I would love for you to, I'm going to ask them to place you on hold and take your information so that we can include you in our database. And we appreciate your phone call. Thank you very much. Go ahead. Go ahead, Bruce.
I wanted to add that is one of the things that we do is we are well connected in the community, from the VA to the other community services. And anybody that has to do employment. I get calls almost every day from employers looking. So we stay well connected. And, of course, with that many number of people come in, we have everything from homelessness to some medical issues to ever. And we spend a lot of times connecting and doing the referrals. And they also refer back to us for the ones that need to do education and training.
Chris, I want to ask you, because you are an addiction therapist, and I want to talk to you about the issue of addiction and veterans. Is that more prevalent than the things we hear? We hear a lot about PTSD and those types of things, but what's happening on the addiction front?
Well, one of the challenges that veterans face is, of course, being psychologically impacted by their experiences. And so some of them, unfortunately, do not reach out to some of the resources that could assist them, and they try to, quote-unquote, self-medicate through substances. And it's a very prevalent issue that, as the gentleman who just came on the line indicated, those services exist, but unfortunately they don't know about it. Then they find themselves using these substances and in many cases interacting with the law, and then they get found out. Unfortunately, now they have a legal issue that they have to contend with as well. But once they're identified, then they enter the system, and then we're on the forefront here at the actual VA hospital in Hampton, along with the Vet Center and the other services in the Hampton Roads region, to support their care along many fronts, not just dealing with the substance-related disorder that they present with, but any physical medical needs that they may have. And in some cases, they have housing challenges that needs to be addressed. But quite honestly, one of the main issues is they need that psychological support to deal with the trauma of facing, some of the experiences they've had. And unfortunately, they deal with it with substance abuse.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Tori joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Tori. You're on the air.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Absolutely.
And to all of our service people, thank you so much for your service. It's just unbelievable what you do for us, because as they say, freedom is not free. My question and concern is I do have a family member who was in Iraq, back now. He's living out of state, and he has been diagnosed with PTSD, and he's considering moving to the Virginia area. And my biggest concern is, will he get lost in the shuffle? I'm glad to hear that there is another resource out there outside of just the VA hospital itself here in the Hampton Roads area. But, my concern is that he does need regular counseling and whatnot. And I'm just afraid if he moves here, like I said, with caseloads being what they are and whatnot, he may not get the access to the help that he really needs. So Can anyone address that for me? And I'll take my answer off the air. Thank you.
Thank you, Tori, for the call. Chris, you want to respond to that first?
Absolutely. I would highly recommend that he access the care where he's at, so that whoever the provider is that he's working with can do a warm handoff with someone here in the Hampton Roads region or wherever he's going to locate. And that's essential, that if he's being seen, then now he has a record that's been established of the type of care that he's needing, along with the other services that could support him. And then the warm handoff can be done by someone being identified specifically that he needs to see once he arrives. And that's really the only way to truly ensure that he gets into the system, is that there's a warm handoff.
Yennetta, you wanted to add to that?
Yes, and also to take advantage of the other resources outside of the VA. There's several medical institutions as well that want to study PTSD patients or want to provide some assistance care. One thing that was vital to my transition, because I came back to Virginia. This is my hometown, but I came back with nothing. I was going to purchase a home here. Not nothing, but I was looking for a home and looking for a place to stay, and with medical care and all that, and having children. When you retire, you don't have access to any of those, active duty privileges that you have. So you do have to take the onus of taking care of what you can and taking advantage of the resources that you get when you attend what we call a transition assistance program. They give you a plethora of material. So I would advise that he, even though he's been out for a while, try to look at any other medical resource, the DAV, disabled vets, combat vets, any other organization outside. The VA is awesome. I thank you for their services as well. But anybody that falls on, even the Department of Labor has special veterans and combat veterans sidebar that they can help with as well if he's looking for employment as a PTSD person.
May I add to that?
Good. Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Real quick,
Chris,
this is Chris. On the website, and if you can have a pen, you can take this down, www.va.gov/VSO. There's a directory of veteran service organizations, and it's an updated directory, 2013 to 2014, and it lists a variety of veteran service organizations that exist across the country to support veterans in many different ways. And so, as I forget the young lady's name, forgive me. Yennetta was just indicating, yes, the VA does exist and have been for many, many years now to support veterans, but there are a lot of veteran service organizations that are eagerly waiting for a veteran to walk through their doors so they can support them as well.
Absolutely. Jaren, though, it sounds like it takes some impetus on the part of the veteran, though, to reach out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You gotta go looking for those. You can't just have those. They don't know you're a veteran. You know what I mean? They don't know they don't know you're here or whatever. But there's also a veteran community, you know, like in this area, we have 10, 15 military bases, you know, and a lot of people come here and don't leave. So, you know, almost anywhere you go, you can find a veteran, somebody who can talk to you. You know, a lot of us have combat experience. A lot of us don't, but, you know, we're here for you. I know my brother works at TNCC in the veteran office there, and, you know, he's there to help. You know, we're all there to help. You know, you just find one, talk to us, you know?
Just reach out. Absolutely. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Jerry joins us from Hampton. Hi, Jerry. You're on the air.
How you doing? I'm also a multi-service and multi-combat veteran. I started Navy. I ended Army. I served Desert Storm, and I served Iraq. Iraq ultimately forced me into a retirement situation. But I'm also, as a Desert Storm, I have Gulf War, the Gulf War syndrome. As a vet, we really had to fight for our benefits coming back. You know, some of us joke that we have PTSD just dealing with our issues because of it actually took me 6 years to get my claim acknowledged by the VA because my issues are respiratory. I'm not missing a limb. I'm not missing, you know. So Gulf Wars, we're medically messed up, but not physically messed up. And some of us are also mentally messed up. You know, I'm actually also a victim of MST, which is male sexual trauma. I was raped. So in that process, the vets now are very much getting served, but still the ones who are in the middle, the ones who are kind of, you guys, the Desert Storm vets, we're still having to struggle to get our benefits and still get seen by all the services.
Wow. Jerry, thanks so much for that call. And I want to talk a little bit about that because does it matter which war you were in terms of how you feel and the types of services that you get, Bruce?
I think there is because I look at some of the benefits that come out. There's a lot coming out for the new group that are out. And my whole staff looks at sometimes and goes, you know, for the Vietnam vets and the betweeners, I really like to talk about the betweeners, but the betweeners are somewhat left out. And they're still in the working age. They're still in the job market. They still need to transition. And they actually still need a lot of the medical care that wasn't diagnosed during that part. And most of them don't know you can go to the VA now. I belong to a Legion post, and I go in there and says, every one of you all can go now. Well, I went years ago. Well, they can go now and get to be seen. The DAV-4 and American Legion does a superb job now of working with betweeners or any other vets to help them get medical benefits they didn't get in the past. So there are service officers to do that. So the answer is yes, there is a difference, and it needs to be a better leveling field on that.
We've got about 3 minutes left, and I tell you, I could talk to you guys all day long. But Chris, I want to ask you, as we start to wrap up, what is the one thing that you would like to tell veterans that is very important for them to know?
To persevere through the challenges and the hurdles that they may be encountering with regard to accessing the service that they deserve and they've earned. that although there may be some challenges around leveling the allocation of services based on when you and where you served, you need to persevere and you need to continue to press forward because you've earned the right to be seen and to gain access to what services exist. Keeping in mind, of course, that there's definitely some challenges with regard to funding. As well, I want to just acknowledge the Fleet and Family Support Center of Hampton Roads. They're on the forefront of helping military members transition out of the service, whether you've been in combat or not, and they have been doing a remarkable job, in particular the folks there at the Transition GPS service there at Norfolk, where I just recently left. I owe a debt of gratitude to them for helping me transition out of the military after a long career back into the civilian workforce so I can be able to provide the services that I provide today. So I just wanted to thank them personally.
Fantastic. That's Christopher Justice, a Navy veteran and addiction therapist with the VA in Hampton. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate that. Jaren, short, quick, what do you want to tell people?
22 veterans a day kill themselves. And I really think those are the people that we need to reach. Suffering from PTSD myself, and I'm a little bit bipolar, it's hard, So I think, some of us are quiet and we don't like going out and talking to people. But, if you know a veteran that's, suffering, that, you need to talk to them, or you need to at least find a resource, somebody, another veteran or a group or organization will gladly go talk to them and take care of them. 22 veterans a day.
Yeah.
That's insane.
That's a lot. That's Jaren Hawkins, an Army veteran and ODU student. Jaren, thank you so much. Yennetta, you got about 10 seconds.
All right. Just because I have a passion for transitioning, that's something I want to do after I graduate anyway. Just take it. Know that there's resources out there for you. You've served, you've earned the right, as Chris said. So please try to take advantage of whatever you can and reach out. Pick up the phone if you need to. If there's a situation that you're going through, just take it upon yourself to reach out.
Thank you so much, Yennetta. That is Yennetta Taylor, an Air Force veteran and a student at ODU. And Dr. Bruce, you have the last word.
Well, I'll be short for sure. If I can tell anything about the veterans and the spouses out there, there is absolutely no shortage of employers that want to hire veterans and spouses. It's unbelievable the number of calls we get. They just have to remember that they need to have good advising for high wage, high demand, and realize that they do need to have retooled to civilian schools.
Absolutely. And that is Dr. Bruce Brunson, Executive Director of the Center for Military and Veterans Education at Tidewater Community College. My thanks to all of you all, and thank you again for your service. And that's our show for today, but the conversation will continue during our screening of Coming Back with Wes Moore. It's this coming Tuesday at 6:30 here at WHRO 5200 Hampton Boulevard. It's free and open to everyone, but space is limited. So please register at WHRO.org/veterans or call Kelly Jackson at 757-889-9415. And don't forget to check out our website, anotherviewradio.org, and sign up for our eView newsletter. It's a once-a-week reminder of upcoming programs. Next week, publicly made racist comments have been front and center in the news lately, and the Another View Roundtable is ready to lend its voice to the conversation. Join us next Friday when Will, Bill, Carol, and guest pundit Tim Siebels share their thoughts. Lively conversation is guaranteed. Our theme music was composed and produced by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Victor Bowen is our audio engineer, and Austin Bell answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Have a fantastic weekend, everyone. And let's get together again next Friday at noon for Another View.